Welcome to the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. I'm KM Weiland, and I am here to take you deep with story theory, writing techniques, and the incredible wisdom of story. I believe story is the greatest power on this earth, and that as writers, we carry the torch of wielding that power with responsibility, passion, and skill. There is no such thing as just a story. Today, it is my honor and my purpose to help you write your best story, astound the world, and maybe change your life. Hello and welcome. You are listening to Season 17, Episode 9. And today's episode is sponsored by Damonza.com. As one of the leading names in book cover design right now, they've designed most of my book covers, and they are currently offering free book cover reviews. So whether you're about to publish or you're just curious to know how your cover stacks up, this review is a no-brainer. This will give you a fresh, informed perspective that offers crucial insight into how your book cover performs in today's very competitive market. So don't miss this chance to make your book unforgettable. It's totally free, and all you have to do is visit damonza.com/review/WBA to get started. That's damonza.com/review/WBA. And now, welcome to this week's episode, Disillusionment Arc in Storytelling, a powerful tool for character growth. The disillusionment arc is one of the most powerful and emotionally resonant transformations a character can undergo. At its core, this arc is about awakening, shedding comforting illusions to face a stark and often uncomfortable truth. Now, while it shares similarities with the positive change arc, the disillusionment arc doesn't always lead to a hopeful resolution. Instead, it challenges both characters and the audience to grapple with the weight of reality. However, despite its seemingly bleak nature, the disillusionment arc isn't inherently negative. It reflects a fundamental aspect of human growth, the process of seeing the world as it truly is and deciding what to do with that knowledge. Although I have always classed the disillusionment arc as one of the three primary negative change arcs, in many ways it is more of a bridge between the two heroic arcs, the positive change arc and the flat, and the two decidedly negative arcs, the corruption arc and the fall arc. We'll be talking more about the fall arc next week. Now, because of this, the disillusionment arc is the quote-unquote lightest of the negative arcs, not only because it is the only negative arc to end with the protagonist's awareness and acceptance of the story's thematic truth, but also because it is the only negative arc to end with the characters standing at a crossroads that may eventually allow them to return to a holistic and life-affirming perspective. Indeed, the comparative negativity of various disillusionment arc stories depends largely on the degree to which characters are embittered by the disillusioning new insights they have recognized. I tend to focus most of my teaching on positive arcs, not only because I am more drawn to writing them, but also because they form the foundation from which the deviations of the negative arcs emerge. However, lately, I have been considering the intrinsic importance of the disillusionment arc to the human experience. The disillusionment arc is unlike the other negative arcs, which are arguably unnecessary for growth. That is, with awareness, skill, and arguably a little luck, they can be bypassed. In contrast, the disillusionment arc is another face of the positive change arc, a more difficult version of the positive change arc. Even though we call it the disillusionment arc, mostly to indicate its darker and more depressing tone, it offers a transformation that can sometimes be even more heroic than the positive change arc, since it involves recognizing and accepting a truth that does not directly benefit the protagonist. So to get us started, I'm just going to run us through the disillusionment arc's structure quickly so that you remember and/or learn for the first time what this arc is all about. The foundation of this arc is that the character starts out believing a lie, overcomes that lie, but the new truth seems tragic. So we start with the hook, in which the character believes a lie in a comfortable, normal world. The protagonist believes a lie that has so far proven necessary or functional in the existing normal world, which is often a comfortable and complacent place. At the inciting event, we find the first hint that this lie is untrue. The call to adventure, when the protagonist first encounters the main conflict, brings this first subtle hint that the lie will no longer serve the protagonist as effectively as it has in the past. And this leads to the first plot point and the full immersion in the adventure world's stark truth, when the protagonist is faced with a consequential choice in which the comfortable old ways of the lie-ridden first act prove ineffective in the face of the main conflict's new stakes. The protagonist will pass through a door of no return to enter the adventure world of the main conflict in the second act, confronted by a stark and painful new truth. In the second act, we encounter the first pinch point where the character is punished for using the lie. The protagonist is quote-unquote punished for using the lie. In the normal world, in the first act, the character was able to use the lie to get the thing they wanted. But in the adventure world, this is no longer a functional mindset. Throughout the first half of the first act, the character will try to use the old lie-based mindset to reach important goals and will be punished by failures until the character begins to learn how things really work. At the midpoint, or the second plot point, the character is forced to face the truth, but is unwilling to embrace it. So the protagonist encounters a moment of truth and comes face to face with this thematic truth, often via a simultaneous plot-based revelation about the external conflict. This is the first time the protagonist consciously recognizes the truth and its power. However, the character is horrified by the implications of this dark new truth. Although no longer able to deny the truth, the character is unwilling to fully embrace it or to surrender the comparatively wonderful old lie. At the second pinch point, the character faces growing frustration with the old lie and disillusionment with the new truth. The protagonist is forced to confront consistently increasing examples of the lie's lack of functionality in the real world. The character grows more and more frustrated with the lie's limitations and begins to accept the quote-unquote horrible truth. The character is profoundly disillusioned by this new worldview, even as there are rewards for using the truth to reach for the want. The third act begins with the third plot point, in which the character accepts that the comforting lie is now completely non-existent. The protagonist is confronted by an irrefutable low moment, in which it is no longer possible to deny that the dark truth is not true. The character must not only accept this new truth, but also admit the comforting old lie is now completely non-existent. In the climax, the character will wield the dark new truth in a final confrontation. The protagonist enters this final confrontation with the antagonistic force to discover whether or not it is possible to gain the want. Directly before or during this section, the character will consciously and explicitly embrace and wield the dark new truth. At the climactic moment, the character must fully acknowledge this truth. The protagonist uses the truth and all its lessons to gain the need. Depending on the nature of the truth, the character may also gain the want, only to discover that in light of all this new knowledge, it is diminished or even worthless. Or the character may sacrifice the want for the greater good. As a result, the character definitively ends the conflict with the antagonistic force. And finally, in the resolution, we find the protagonist disillusioned with the new truth. The protagonist enters a new normal world, or returns to the original normal world, but with a jaded eye now in light of the new truth. So if you're familiar with a positive change arc, you can see how this is in fact quite similar to the positive change arc, in which the character starts out believing a lie, overcomes that lie, but in that case, the new truth is liberating. Apart from Disillusionment Arc's darker tone, the major difference between it and a positive change arc is the character's response to the newly recognized truth at the end of the story. From this, we can see how the Disillusionment Arc isn't as inherently negative as it may sometimes feel. Certainly to anyone going through a disillusionment arc, it can feel quite negative, since the dismantling of cherished and comfortable personal perspectives can be excruciatingly painful. Little wonder we may fight tooth and claw to avoid change, rather than courageously and consciously embracing it. Indeed, the very fact that evolution must move from unconsciousness to consciousness makes it more likely that catalysts will initially be greeted with the ignorant resistance that we see embodied in disillusionment arcs. In fact, we can think of the relationship between the positive change arc and the disillusionment arc as that of nesting dolls. Within every positive change arc is a disillusionment arc. The third plot point in a positive change arc, that is the low moment, is where the character fully faces the disillusionment and, in a positive change arc, rises above it into integration. For example, in The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne is torn apart by the Joker's systematic attacks upon his ethos. In the end, he embraces all he has learned at great cost to himself in order to incorporate these tragic new truths into his larger commitment to using the Batman identity to protect Gotham. Now, in contrast, the disillusionment arc's psychological evolution ends at the low point of disillusionment, postponing future integration, perhaps indefinitely. For example, in the movie Silence, the protagonist's worldview and faith paradigm are systematically destroyed until finally he must accept that denial of his faith is the only way to survive. This is not a truth he ever fully integrates, as he is shown to struggle between the inner and outer dissonance of these two perspectives for the rest of his life. So as you can see, the major difference between the positive change arc and the disillusionment arc is that the truth the characters learn in the latter turns out to be distasteful and perhaps even personally destructive. Although the truth in a positive change arc may require deep commitment and even sacrifice, the story will end with characters having fully integrated that truth as a lost piece of themselves, which allows them to end in a place of greater wholeness. For example, in the movie Glory, Captain Shaw sacrifices his life fighting alongside his men in one of the first black regiments in the Civil War. Despite his tragic death, he ends as a more whole and noble person, having evolved his own narrow views. In contrast, the disillusionment arc ends prior to integration. Characters have accepted the truth and perhaps even acted upon it, but they have not embraced or integrated it into a new identity. Their previous worldview and ego identity have been shattered, and they have not yet been able to put the pieces back together. For example, Training Day shows its idealistic rookie cop shattered by the corruption he has witnessed. Because the character was able to keep his moral core intact throughout the movie, viewers may extrapolate that he will find the strength and courage to use the difficult truth he has learned to eventually rise into a better version of himself. But the story ends on a downbeat, while the character still suffers from the destruction of what had previously seemed an intact worldview. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned that the disillusionment arc may be seen as a bridge between the positive arcs and the negative arcs. And one of the reasons for this is that it is the most unfinished of the arcs. It ends with the character at a crossroads. On the one hand, they have learned something positive in that truth is always an avenue of growth and therefore healing. On the other hand, they have experienced something negative in that the truth shredded their lives and/or seems to be saying something completely undesirable about the nature of reality. Most disillusionment arcs end with the character's disillusionment. That emotion is the final beat. Where the character will go from there is left open. There are two possibilities. Option number one is that the character will eventually integrate the difficult new truth into a more expansive and holistic identity and ego container. And in this case, the character will be primed to finish a positive change arc and perhaps even move into a flat arc role in which they will be capable of inspiring others who are struggling on the same path. For example, we can see this in the movie Promised Land, in which Matt Damon's character accepts what he has learned about the corruption of the natural gas companies he works for, leaving behind his well-intentioned but naive belief that he is accomplishing something positive in people's lives. Although disillusioned, he maintains enough faith in himself and others to join a new community and keep moving forward toward a new way of being. Option number 2 is that the character's disillusionment will sour into bitterness. So instead of integrating the new truth and expanding into a new personality large enough to grapple with it and ultimately use it to positively in the world, the character will instead resist the truth, leading to denial, even more limited perspectives, that is, lies, and eventually worse corruption still. This sets the character up for a subsequent fall arc, which evolves from lie to worse lie, and which we will be exploring in the next episode. Or a corruption arc, which evolves from truth to worse lie. For example, the plot of Memento is literally a search for the truth, as the protagonist, a man suffering from short-term memory loss, struggles to remember enough to solve the mystery of his wife's murder. By the end, he learns the truth that he is perpetuating his violent revenge, even though those responsible are already dead. The final scene indicates he will refuse to record this truth for his future self to remember, instead sliding into an ever deeper spiral of self-deception and corruption. So, in conclusion, it's important to remember that even though this arc may end in disillusionment, it still offers a crucial space for growth. The Disillusionment Arc serves as a profound exploration of the human experience. It challenges characters, and by extension the audience, to confront uncomfortable truths. These uncomfortable truths and the realistic portrayal of how difficult it can be to integrate them reveal transformations just as impactful as those in aspirational narratives. Disillusionment arcs pave the way for deeper understanding about potential transformations. The emotional depth of this arc lies in its ability to expose the fragility of our beliefs and our own personal resilience in the face of that ongoing fragility. So ultimately, whether characters move toward integration or toward bitterness, the journey offers a powerful reflection on the complexities of facing painful truths. Now, if you're fascinated by the nuances of character development, as I am, including the Disillusionment Arc, my Creating Character Arcs workbook is the perfect resource to help you craft complex, compelling characters. Packed with exercises and practical tips, it will guide you through detailed beat sheets and exercises for 5 primary character archetypes: the positive change arc, the flat arc, the disillusionment arc, the fall arc, and the corruption arc. So whether you're exploring a disillusionment arc or another iteration, I designed this workbook to help you structure your characters' journeys for maximum impact. It's available in paperback and ebook, along with its companion guide, Creating Character Arcs. And now I hope you'll stop by the site and talk to me about this. How do you see the disillusionment arc impacting your character's growth? And that brings us to the end of this episode of Helping Writers Become Authors. I hope you'll stop by the site for a full transcript of this episode and to join in the conversation in the comments. Tune in for next week's episode, where we'll continue to explore all things writing and storytelling. If you'd like to support the podcast, it always means a ton when you take a moment to leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or Spotify. To stay updated on all the latest content I create for you, the best way is to join my mailing list at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com/mailing list. You'll also immediately gain access to lots of free resources, including my books, Crafting Unforgettable Characters and 5 Secrets of Story Structure. For real-time connection with me, more writing advice, and behind-the-scenes glimpses, follow me on Instagram at authorkmwyland. A heartfelt thank you to each one of you for your support and enthusiasm, and especially those of you who support my work on patreon.com/kmwyland. You help make my site, this podcast, and so many other resources available to writers everywhere. So until next week, keep writing, keep dreaming, and most importantly, keep being true to your stories. Thank you for being part of Helping Writers Become Authors.